You're listening to Walk It Out with Tricia Goyer, where we discover what it looks like to follow God and be swept away on the journey of a lifetime. Author of over 70 books, mom of 10, yes, 10, homeschooler and speaker, Tricia Goyer will explore what radical obedience to God's word looks like. It's time to hear from God lovers who've dared to say yes. Listen in to heart chats and learn how others overcame doubts and fears. Discover how God used ordinary people to impact others one step at a time. If you're ready to get radical, get going, and make a difference in this world, you're at the right place. Here's your host, prolific writer, world traveler, people lover, and mega nap taker, Tricia Goyer.
Hey friends, welcome to Walk It Out. Now, my guest today, we're going to be talking about parenting, but parenting in ways I never experienced with my first kids. So we had 3 biological kids, and then we adopted 7 more, and it just opened my world up to special needs parenting. And I remember being in the middle of trying to figure out doctor's visits and being an advocate to my kids. And I'm like thinking, this is a whole new world, and I didn't even know where to go for encouragement. So I am so excited about this book. So my guest today is Jamie Sumner, and she's written for the New York Times and the Washington Post, among many other publications. She's the author of the nonfiction book on motherhood, Unbound, a middle grade novel called Roll With It, and she has a new book called Eat, Sleep, and Save the World, Words of Encouragement for the Special Needs Parent. So welcome so much, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, and I would just start out by telling us about your family and kind of the season that you're in right now.
Ooh, the season we're in. Well, the season we're in is extra crazy. So, my husband and I are in Nashville. That's where we live and raise our kids. And I am mom to Charlie, who is 8. And Charlie has cerebral palsy, as well as something called Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, which is pretty rare. It's an overgrowth syndrome, which means he was born larger, and more specifically, he was born with an enlarged tongue, which extended his stay in the NICU and led to him coming home with a tracheotomy to be able to breathe and a G-tube to be able to eat. Luckily, he has neither one of those now, but he is in a wheelchair, and he uses a speaking device that kind of looks like an iPad to speak. Well, uses it when he wants to. Most of the time, he just likes to point and like use when he's with me, the mom, like shorthand of you know what I want. So
come on,
let me do that. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's Charlie. And then I also have 6-year-old. They just turned 6 this week, so I have to practice saying that.
Yeah.
6-year-old twins, Cora and Jonas. So we're busy. We're not as busy as you, but we are busy. Mostly it's a matter in this season of life of keeping people busy because with Charlie was in first grade until, summer started abruptly. And he loves school. He's in a public school. He loves his bus ladies who pick him up. He loves his teacher and also his special ed teacher and his therapist there. And so it was a really hard transition for him to all of a sudden not be there and not see those people. And he's heavy. he's a heavy kid. And so lifting him in and out and making sure he gets enough movement during the day is one of the biggest things that I'm kind of working through now that we're all home. And I want to make sure he stays entertained and he gets to move around. And so we're figuring that out as we go.
Yeah. And I think with kids just in general, like, summer break is always like everyone's excited for it, but now like officially summer break is here, but they've been out of school for so long, and even like we homeschool, so you think that we would just be going on as normal, but no, my kids did activities and they hung out with friends and all the things, and so it is a huge challenge. But I love you talk about like Charlie loved his school, and I just love how he just made so many connections and these great people in his life, and now you're like, okay, it's all me. It's all on mom.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And then you have 2 others that are just running around, and that is a very busy age also.
Oh, they're so busy, and like trying to teach them about like safe distances and washing hands and not sharing things, and it's like in one ear and out the other, and so you're constantly monitoring. And we live on a cul-de-sac. To give you a picture of our house, we live in the suburbs.
We do too. Like we're at the end of the cul-de-sac. Yeah.
It's like a circus outside all the time. Like there's always something going on, and it's so tempting because they want to do all these things. And you know, Charlie was immunocompromised for a very long time, so we err on the conservative side of like venturing back out and doing things.
Right.
But it's hard when their friends don't, you know? So
yeah,
it's a tricky little balance that we're kind of living right now.
Yeah. And, you know, I love that you wrote this book and that you're just like giving hope and encouragement for, you know, parents with special needs kids. And what I love is you talk about like, it's not to tell you what to do better. It's to say like, you're already doing it and God has already helped you and is providing for you. And I'm like, yes, please, because, you know, there's like, oh, you should do this better and you should do that better. And, you know, we have, my kids' special needs are, you know, there's a lot of learning disabilities. So there's a lot of therapists. There's been OT therapy. There's been, one of our daughters has an autoimmune disease. So she's had to have lots of transfusions and doctor's visits and stuff. And with 3 biological kids that had none of this, it is like this whole new world. And you know, you also talk about like feeling like you could always be doing more, like I need to do this therapy or that or this group or that. But I love that you're like, God is with you and you are doing it, and just to look at like what you're already doing well, I think is so helpful for parents.
Well, I think the thing, it's like you look at parents of kids with special needs, and you could never accuse any of them of being lazy or lackadaisical about their parenting, because you don't have that choice anyway.
Right.
You know, like you can't just say, here, go entertain yourself, or you work on your therapies, whatever they may be, and you self-regulate that. We don't have the option of ignoring what needs to be done and assuming it'll get done. And so the thing that drove me crazy about books for parents, for one, but then especially the books for parents of kids with special needs, is they all felt like they were lists of things you needed to do. And we don't need more lists. Like that's not where our brain, that's not the wavelength that our brain is tuned into. We're not thinking, please give me more to do. We know already, we have a running commentary of all the things we feel like we're not doing enough of.
Right.
And that's, I think, the biggest hurdle to overcome is flipping the perspective so that you see what you are doing so well and how God created you to be the parent of this particular child, and how you have the traits already in you to be the person your child needs you to be. And you're being that, even if you don't feel it in the moment. And I think none of us stop and let ourselves feel that and let God show his appreciation for us and how we were created in his image and how he's helping us take care of our kids. Like there's not a lot of appreciation because we are always thinking about the next thing. And I feel like to have hope and to have rest and peace, which is what we all need, you have to be able to see the things that you're doing well with the help of God and take a little bit of respite in that.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a couple other things too. You need to let things go. Other things that you, like I used to think were super important, aren't super important anymore. And then also let people help you and let, you know, people like come into your home. I mean,
oh my gosh, preach it. Yes.
Yeah. So many things. So just yesterday we had a speech therapist at the house, an occupational therapist in the house, my not teenage, she's 26 now. Oh my goodness. So my older son, he comes over and he will like take the kids on walks and do stuff with the ones that aren't doing therapy because I still am working. And then one of my teen daughters was on a counseling appointment for trauma therapy. And I'm like, in this moment, and then I also have my grandma lives with us. She's 90. And so she has a caregiver here too. So, even though we're social distancing, these kids still need therapy, and my grandma still needs care. And my son comes over and he's like, I'm going to take the kids to the walk, or I'm going to take them to get ice cream. I'm like, thank you so much. But it is so much of, when I first started having like therapists come to the house and stuff, like I'd make sure the house was clean. And now it's like, step over the shoes. I haven't vacuumed, in 3 days. I mean, it's just like, you have to get over yourself and just realize this is more than I can do on my own. And there's amazing, amazing people out there that can provide help. And it's okay. Like, it's okay to accept that help.
That is one of the things I am so grateful to Charlie for. I think he forces me to open myself up in my messy life in a way that I would not have without him, I think. Because I mean, it is what it is. You see me struggling to get the wheelchair out of the car, or if he has a meltdown in the park, or yes, ditto on the messy house with like dog hair floating, drifting in the wind. I mean, it's all these things. And I feel as though if I hadn't had a child who needed so much more than I could give, I would have stayed in that mentality of I can do this on my own for so much longer. Like I would have fought that kind of relinquishing of control so much harder than I did, because there was literally physically, when Charlie was having a seizure and the paramedics had to ask me to step out of the way because there was nothing I could do. At some point you got to learn to get out of your own way. And I think without being forced to do that, it would have taken me a lot longer to learn that lesson. And it is so empowering and such a relief to let all those people in to help you with your life, which is how we're meant to live. We're meant to live in community, not in isolation and trying to do it on our own. And I think it's one of our greatest strengths is knowing that we can't be the strongest person in the room all the time.
Yeah, that is so good. So, I had the experience with 3 kids that I homeschooled, that, I was able to keep my house clean. They were good kids. We were talking yesterday because I was setting out all these meds for the kids that my kids are on, especially our autoimmune. Well, it takes 30 minutes to figure out all the meds for the week. And my older son was here and we were talking. I'm like, I don't even think I took you to the doctor maybe once every 5 years. It was just so a different thing. But I was so almost prideful, yes, my house is clean, the kids are great. And now I remember when
you felt capable.
Yeah, I felt capable. Yeah. I could do this. And so when we started adopting kids, I'm like, I've been a mom for all these years. We could, and then I'm
I got this.
What in the world? What do you mean appointments and this and that? And I was, one child was doing occupational therapy, speech therapy. We go to the eye doctor. He's like, yeah, his eyes aren't tracking. And then they check his sister, and they're like, her eyes aren't tracking. I'm like, what? They're like, they need vision therapy. I'm like, no, we're already doing 3 other therapies, and and then the speech therapist is like, well, the youngest 3 are dyslexic. I'm like, what? No, we can only do one of these things at a time. We cannot do all of this. And so it's totally made me depend on God, depend on other people. And just humbled me. I'm sitting in my room right now. There's piles of stuff. I'm okay though. Our life is good. My kids are, healthy at this moment. We have amazing people to help us. And you just have to discover this new normal where you can't be perfect. You just need to depend on God and trust him. And it's a good place to be. Now, friends will hey, I'm going to stop by, and I'm like, okay, it's messy. Fine. I don't even care anymore, which before it would have completely freaked me out if someone was coming and my house wasn't clean and perfect and everything. So you have to totally just get over yourself.
And I so feel you on that desire to please just hand me one diagnosis, one thing to work on at one time.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like you stop being able to process it all like the overload of things that you have to work on and that they have to work on. Oh my gosh, I so feel you with that. Also, vision therapy. Yes, we did eye patches for years to try to like strengthen vision. That was one of the things we did. And it's this idea that if you can get one thing under control, then you're starting to line up the dominoes in the right way. That's going to lead to a pattern, that's going to lead to this beautiful like thing that is success at the end.
Yeah.
And I think God does that. I think that's why life is so messy. Like our own personal lives, irregardless of what we're dealing with as parents, just in general, I think the reason you can't graph your life and it looks like a trajectory that's always pointing up is because he doesn't want us to feel like life is about that. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
That life is about creating something that is a perfect picture. It is so much more about letting those people in that want to drop by and having a genuine conversation instead of working towards this ideal that's not meant to be here. It's meant to be in heaven. That's why heaven is so great, because it's so not what we have here. And I think it's a really good reminder of that.
Yeah. And I think like our goal as parents is to make our lives comfortable and our kids' lives comfortable and everything go well and have them not struggle. And when it's not that, it's like, okay, yeah, we're struggling, but God is still good. Like my kids have learned, and even our biological kids, all of a sudden we adopt like 7 more kids into our family. But like they've grown and they've changed and they see things differently. And, now my kids are like, well, when I adopt kids someday, it's like, you just see that we have a different heart and family means something different. And just like, it's special. The kids, I think God has a good plan for them because of what they're experiencing too. That yes, it's hard, but their hearts are tender to those that have different needs, and they're, it's just like, it's not like if we raise kids in a complete comfort zone, without problems, like they don't grow in God in the ways that they should either. And so, as God's working on us, He's also working on our kids as a family, as we overcome and learn to support each other in ways that maybe other families don't have to.
Yeah. And I think too, like as we let our kids see us struggle, I think that's really important, because like I can't count how many times I've had to stop and apologize to my kids for various things.
Yep.
And I think that's so important, to be able to show your kids your weaknesses and show your kids that you're learning too, because if they grow up thinking, 1, we have it all together, or 2, even if you don't have it all together, you power through and pretend like you do. I think those are like lessons that you don't even know you're imparting on them. And so every time I have to stop and apologize, in my head, I'm thinking, this is good. This is good for me. And this is even better for them. And it's going to be okay. And it's just the lessons you learn at the same time that you're also trying to teach things to your kids is funny. And, anyone who accuses God of not having a sense of humor, like... needs to look around for sure at life. Yeah,
I love that so much. And another thing that you talk about, and I can't remember, like I was watching videos, I was reading your books, so I can't remember if it's in the book or not, but you talk about like when other kids want to ask questions, like at a playground or something, like why is he in a wheelchair, or whatever, and then the parents are like, oh come on, and you're like, no, I want to, we could talk about this, it's okay to talk about that. And I know like with our kids, we've adopted 7, and so sometimes I'll say something about my adopted kids and I'm like, you shouldn't say that. I'm like, oh no, they love like sharing how they were adopted, because some of them were adopted as teenagers, and so they don't feel like they'll be in the church nursery or something with someone and they're like, oh, we heard all about your adoption, so like they like talking about it. It's not like I feel like they're any less my kids, but I think sometimes people are scared of conversations where there's adoption or special needs, or and really we're like, no, it's okay to talk about it. So I would just love to share a little about that.
this is really funny because this happened yesterday. So I'll share. So we were, I've been taking Charlie on a lot of walks because what else is there to do?
Yeah.
And it gets us outside, and he has a big jogging stroller that is going to fit him until he's probably 20 or older. Like, it's amazing. I love it so much. And so we'll go on lots of walks, and he just chills and has a snack and gets to be outside in the air, and it's fun, and we talk about random things we see. And because I walk in the neighborhood, and like I said, he goes to the public school, there was a girl outside with her dad and I guess her younger sister, and we are approaching, and she goes, "Hi, Charlie." So she knows him, and I'm assuming she knows him from school. And I stop the stroller and I say, "Charlie, can you say hi?" And he'll wave. And it was this really sweet interaction. I'm like, and in my head, I'm thinking, I'm glad he got to see his friend. I'm glad we stopped. And the dad's kind of like leaning against the car, smiling. And then she goes, "What happened to him?" And and then she also followed it up with like, "How did he get hurt?"
Oh yeah.
And at first, I because I knew she knew him from school, so I'm like, does she not know? So I said, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Why is he in there?" And I said, "Oh, okay." So in my head, I'm thinking we're going to have this conversation. And the one thing I say this in the book, is when adults are so afraid to be rude. They're just afraid to be rude. Mm-hmm. Politeness is the ultimate goal. And so a lot of times if their kids come up to Charlie and ask these questions, they'll kind of smile and just pull the kids away before we even can interact. And that is excruciating for me because it means Charlie doesn't have a chance to be seen and understood. It kind of ends a conversation when really we want to be included.
Right.
So I was grateful because this guy was just kind of smiling and gave me space. Like, he didn't try to end the conversation. He gave me space to talk. And so, I said, Charlie was born this way. So this is always how he's been. This is how God made his body. And, that's why he uses his wheelchair at school. And, this is just how we roll. And she, kids, to their credit, she's like, "Oh, okay. Bye, Charlie." And then she starts to go, "Do you want me to draw you a picture?" Because they had sidewalk chalk. They're like, "Do you want me to draw you a picture?" And she's just on to the next thing. And it's just part of her world now. And she just normalized his experience in a way that I just left smiling. Yeah. And the dad smiled and he's like, "Have a good walk." And I said, "Thank you." And it was what I would have wanted for that encounter because she asked the question. There's no uncomfortable feelings. Charlie gets to be better understood, and we all leave feeling better. And you could see that from the outside as like, "Oh, that was a rude question. She shouldn't have asked that." But what does that mean? If you don't open up the dialogue, then there's no dialogue, and nobody but wants to be in their own bubble that they feel like they can't access the rest of the world because the rest of the world kind of doesn't see them. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not fair. And so I always encourage people, please just ask, open up a dialogue and have a conversation because it's better than pretending like situations and people and conditions don't exist.
Right. And kids are usually not being rude. They're just curious.
Right. Right.
It's not like
you're
they're like,
teaching them
problem.
that it's rude. Yeah. You're teaching them that it's rude if you act like that's an uncomfortable thing to do or say.
Yeah. So I love that. And I think that's going to be really helpful for listeners too, to like, oh, it's okay. Like, it's okay for us to walk up and have the conversation and, and you leave the parent to whether they want to continue that conversation or end the conversation, but just know that it's okay to start the conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. And so I just love, just making us aware of, things that are okay. And like, people want to be included. They want to be seen. They want to be, appreciated. And I just love that so much. And so I would just love to hear too, how has, connecting with the community just helped you, as you parent?
Charlie attended a special needs preschool, an inclusive preschool. And before he did that, my world of kind of the special needs spectrum of help was, he had the trach, and so we didn't leave the house much. And it was like some people come in, then they come out, but our life was still our life. And it really wasn't until he started to attend that preschool that I met other parents who had children with differences and really saw all the ways that God has created families and children and how he is orchestrating their lives. And I really think seeing the diversity of families has blessed me so much. And to be able to cry in the parking lot with a fellow mom, or trade gate trainers because mine will work for yours better than the one they have, and vice versa, and let's just do this. And we like cackle because like we got away with something and insurance wasn't involved. Like just little things that have blessed me so much and made me not feel so isolated, because I think that's the hardest and scariest thing of parenting, motherhood especially, but then with kids with special needs even more so. You can very easily fall into this is entirely my experience, and I'm in kind of this black hole of my life, and when things get hard, you don't have a way to kind of crawl out of it. You don't have people to bring you out of it. And so being able to see other families and then connect with them has been such a blessing for me, because it's kept me open and it's kept me aware of the big wide world of other people like us. And I think that is why I don't think I would have written this book if I didn't have that perspective, because I knew there were other people out there who felt alone and disheartened by their parenting and felt like no one could understand. And I just want to like climb up on the roof and shout. That would be appropriate for while we're all kind of home alone. I could just climb up on the roof and shout, you are not alone. I understand what you're feeling, and I am here, and I want you to know I'm here, and I want you to know that your experience and mine may not look exactly the same, but our hearts are traveling that same path.
Yeah. And I would even say, like, even as I was reading the book, I'm like, oh, I can totally relate to this. Like, our experiences are completely different. Like, a lot of my kids are occupational needs and emotional needs. And so really, it has been like our experiences are completely different, but our hearts are the same. Like our desire to turn to God is the same. And so that has been like a huge blessing. And so I love this book. I think this would be a perfect book to, buy for someone. I think so many times we don't know what to do. And that's what my next question I wanted to ask, like, what can you do? Maybe you don't have a special needs child, but what can you do? And I think number one, eat, sleep, and save the world. This would be a great gift to pass on. But what other things can people do when they just want to show someone that they love them and they care and want to be a support?
I think, again, this goes back to that politeness factor. I think people are afraid to lean in because they don't want to seem either pushy, or they don't want to feel like they're implying that somebody needs help.
Right.
And I think that the best way to connect is to, this sounds silly, but the best way to connect is to check in with your people. And what I mean by that is kind of get over that initial hurdle of, oh, I don't want to bother them. And really ask the question, how are you doing? Are you okay? What can I do for you? And then stop long enough to listen, because I think people ask that a lot, but then they don't expect a genuine answer. And if you ask the question not expecting a genuine answer, you're probably not going to get one.
Right.
Because people can sense that. And so I would say ask with intention and then listen. And for me, like you said before, it takes something on the part of the parent of the child with special needs to be able to open up about those things. The other thing I would say, and this kind of goes against common like perception too. But don't be afraid to share your own struggles with that person, with that family and that parent. Because the biggest thing I hear is, but I know this doesn't compare to what you're going through, but this is what's going on. And I think, no, it does compare. It may not be the same situation. You may have all typically neurotypical kids and everything is, on track with that. But we all, like you said before, we all are traveling our own emotional roads. And it's not a competition of whose life is harder or who's going through the harder situation. It's about sharing the reality of our lives so that then someone else can share their reality with us. So I think that is such a big deal for me, is when a friend is willing to open up about what's going on with them, because then it makes me comfortable opening up with what's going on with me. If it's just a one way, here, let me help you.
Right.
Well, no, nobody wants to feel like they're always the one that needs to be helped. I want the opportunity to help as well. And so I think having that relationship that is a reciprocal one is really important.
Yeah, that's really good. And I never thought about that before. But the people that I feel like I can open up to, they may be talking about work struggles, or this is going on, or and it's not even the same. Like, some of my friends have their kids are gone and out of the house, but because they're sharing kind of what's going on, and not in like a grumbling, this is a horrible life sort of way, but just really just sharing from their heart, I'm able to like, oh, okay, this is what's going on, and can you pray about this? Or, it does, when we're able to be vulnerable with wherever we're at, it does let people be that back to us. Oh, so good. Okay, so talk about really quickly what you covered in the book, because determination, hope, resilience, patience, laughter, and thankfulness. So, like, why did you choose those things, and what do you want readers to walk away with when they close the book?
So that's a good question. So I picked basically 6 traits that I feel like, one, parents of kids with special needs just have in abundance. And 2, these are the biggest ones that they don't recognize in themselves. So determination, hope, resilience, patience, laughter, and thankfulness. And I wanted to, within those sections, I share stories of my own life, and also biblical stories where I see God working in the lives of others, because I want to show how it played out for me. And then hopefully whoever is reading can recognize that in their own life, because books are mirrors. That's kind of like, we see them as mirrors and windows to reflect back on us so that we can recognize ourselves in someone else's story. And then windows so that we can see out into the world with a different perspective. And that's kind of what I wanted this book to be. I wanted someone who's reading it to maybe recognize something that they never recognized in themselves, and then to step even further back and say, oh, this is how God has designed this world and me in it. And this is how I can walk through with maybe a lighter step.
That's so good. And I love your, like, even though it's like sharing your story, there's so much of us being able to reflect our stories in it. And then you open it up to that, and you talk about the biblical stories and, everything that's involved. It's like, okay, I am not alone. I'm not the only ones, but look at, I am patient. I'm learning to be patient. I have to be determined. I have to be an advocate for my kids. And it's like, okay, it's almost like, like you're able to release a breath, like, I'm understood, and this is good. So that's encouragement I got.
That's a great way to put it, like releasing a breath. Absolutely. That you didn't even know you were holding.
Right, exactly. Oh, I love that. So, and then what do you hope, like, when they close the book, like, what do you hope they just walk away with for their own lives and maybe their own day? Because sometimes we can't even look like for my whole life, but what can they walk away with for the day that they're currently in?
I hope they walk away knowing that they are loved ultimately, that they are a child that is taken care of just as they're taking care of their own child.
Mm-hmm.
And that empowers them to be a parent who parents in trust, because parenting looks a lot different when you're trusting that God has it under control, and when you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really hope that it can help those who read it become better parents. Not that it necessarily changes anything about their parenting, but it changes their attitude about themselves and how God has created them as parents. That's my hope.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so where can people go to find out more information about you, and then also Eat, Sleep, and Save the World?
So the book is everywhere books are sold. So your independent bookstore, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you go to buy books, it's there. But also you can find out more about me, read some of the articles I've written as well on my website, which is Jamie, Jamie, Sumner, SUMNER.com. And you can email me there too if you just want to connect and ask questions or share your own story. I love it when I get to hear other people's stories too. So
yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story, and just thank you for bringing encouragement to so many. It was so good to talk with Jamie today and just to hear her heart and be encouraged by her. I love on the back cover of Eat, Sleep, and Save the World, this is what it says: an encouraging and empowering read. Eat, Sleep, Save the World reminds every parent of a child with special needs that they are, in fact, superheroes. And I think that's just the encouragement that we all need, for someone to say, you are doing amazing, you are doing a great job. And so many times we feel discouraged and we feel like we aren't doing enough, we aren't giving enough. And if we can just do a little bit more, that it would help our kids more. But I love that releasing of the breath and saying, no, God has called me to this. I am doing a good job, and He is with me all the way. So the Walk It Out verse for today is John 14:27. And this is in the New Living Translation version. And it says, I am leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. And this is about Jesus talking about He's given us the advocate, the Holy Spirit, to be with us and to give us peace. And I think when we are afraid and when we are worried, peace seems so hard to grasp. And when we have kids, especially, like, we are such an advocate for our kids. We love our kids. We want the best for our kids. And there's some things we can't fix. There's some things we can't make better. There's some needs that will never be fully taken care of. And here before heaven, our kids will not be fully healed. But I am so thankful that we have God and we can turn to Him, and that we can have peace of mind and heart, and we can see Him in the little ways throughout the day as we care for our children, and that makes such a huge difference. So even when we can't maybe change our children's diagnosis or their circumstances, that we can have peace. And when the mamas and the daddies and the caregivers have peace, that makes such a huge difference. In our kids' lives too. They can sense that. They can sense when we're at peace and when we're leaning on God and when we're depending on God. So again, John 14:27, I am leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. So let me pray for you today. Lord, I am so thankful for every listener. And I just pray especially for those listeners, or maybe friends of listeners or family members of listeners who have children with special needs. And we want to do everything to care for and provide for and make things better for our children. And sometimes we can't fix things. Sometimes medical conditions and needs aren't things that we can fix and that doctors can't fix. But Lord, I thank you that we learn so much as we care for our children. We learn to depend on you more. We learn to trust in you more. We learn to have peace even in the middle of hard circumstances. Lord, I thank you for Jamie. I thank you for her voice to the world that reminds us that you are doing great, that you are doing enough. And when those lists seem a mile long and our worries seem even longer, that we can just remember that we are doing well. And I'm so thankful for her voice saying that. I pray for Jamie and her husband and for Charlie and their other children, that you will just bless them as they pour out to other people, Lord. I thank you for the gift that she has given to so many through this book. I pray that you'll bless their family and bless all the steps that you have for her, Lord. And I pray for each one today that they may be encouraged if they know a family that has a child with special needs, just to start a conversation, to reach out, to become vulnerable themselves so that they can, their friend or family member can feel that they can turn to them too, Lord. And just be with us today. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, friend, I am so thankful for all of you. I am so thankful for the new listeners. So if you are listening for the very first time, welcome. If you have listened to many, many podcasts, I am so thankful for your faithfulness. I really appreciate it. I love that you trust me enough to give me your time, that I can have these conversations and you can be a part of them too. Always, you can go to walkitoutpodcast.com to look at all the podcasts. There are so many great ones, and I'm so blessed to be able to have all these conversations and then also share a little bit of our lives as I'm having these conversations with friends. If you know someone who just really needs to be encouraged, send them over to walkitoutpodcast.com, or you can tell them to look it up. Look for Tricia Goyer on iTunes or their favorite podcast app, and I pray that they might be encouraged too. If you subscribe, then you will get notified when my new podcasts come out. Also, if you go to triciagoyer.com, right there on the homepage, if you scroll down just a little bit, you can see my newsletter. If you sign up for that, every week I share who I interviewed. I share kind of some behind the scenes. I connect maybe some other blogs or articles or podcasts that also are on the same subject. It's all in my newsletter. I'm always trying to give someone away for free. So a free printable, a free recipe, so many good things. And once a week, you will get that in your inbox. And I love getting encouragement back. People will just respond to that and say, thank you so much. This is exactly what I needed today. So if you need encouragement in the middle of your week, if you need to be reminded of the podcast or be kind of behind the scenes and other information on the topic, be sure to go to triciagoyer.com, scroll down and subscribe to my newsletter that goes out weekly. Well, friend, I am so thankful for you, and I just pray a special blessing over you this week.
Thanks for listening to Walk It Out. Head over to the show notes for this podcast and all past episodes at www.walkitoutpodcast.com. If you love the show, share it with someone you know who can make a radical difference in the world. We love new friends.